Hello, hello, and welcome to my thought on really nice Sunday. Nice Sunday. And I've been reading I'm always reading papers a week late about the tremendous hatred of the police. And I think we all forget that, as with all uh, generalities, you can't make a general statement about all policemen any more than you can about any one race or any one religion or any one group of people, because they're all very different. So I'm going to tell you my favorite policeman story, and some of you may have heard it already. But I have found of late that California police are among the worst human beings in the world. Not all of them, because I entertain a love-hate relationship with the police. You put an ordinarily lovely young man on traffic control, and he becomes a hateful, angry, vindictive misogynist. It reminds me very much of my first husband when I went to pick him up in Harvard with a broken axle in the car. And he said to me, "How could you be so stupid that you drove that car with a broken axle? You're ruining the tire." And I said, "You told me not to be late, honey." My husband divorced me immediately. California police don't have to divorce me because they can give me tickets, like the young man that caught me making a U-turn under the sign that said, "No U-turn." "What are you doing?" he said. "I'm trying to read the sign," I said. "I'm very nearsighted." That cost me $75 and 8 weeks in traffic school. However, it's not the same with police women. For example, I was driving the car when I was in the United States. I was driving the car with my three little babies in the back seat, along with my groceries. And this policeman stopped me and she said, "Honey, do you know you were doing 75?" And then she looked in the back seat and she heard my eldest barfing into the groceries. She said, "Oh my, you have a problem. You better hurry home or it'll soak in." And she beckoned me on, and I continued at 75 miles an hour until I got home and saved my groceries and cleaned up my pet. Um, However, uh, I am, as you all know, a very small woman, and I have been taught in school that the policeman is your friend. I have always been taught that the policeman is your friend. And policemen from Ohio, Oklahoma, Texas, up until I moved to California, whenever I was in trouble, I would simply call the police and they would help. They would help. But when I first moved to California, um, I was trying to cook dinner, and I cooked dinner very late. I was cooking dinner when the light bulb in my kitchen blew. And I looked outside to see whether there was anybody awake that could help me because I was too short to reach the light bulb, and nobody was. So I thought about it. It was dark, and I was hungry, and I was right in the middle of cooking dinner. And then I remembered I have a friend in the police department. So I called the Pacifica, that's where I was living, the Pacifica, California Police Department. And the young man that I got was obviously nothing like my father. He was absolutely nothing like my father, who was a very kind, lovely man, whom I also called when I was in trouble. This policeman was nothing like my father. He was very much like my first husband. And he screamed at me and said, "Do you mean to tell me? Do you mean to tell me that you're wasting taxpayers' money by having me stop what I'm doing?" And this is at 1 in the morning. "Stop what I'm doing and come change your light bulb." Well, I know how to deal with angry men. I had two husbands. I know how. I know how. I smiled into the telephone. I said, "It's perfectly all right, darling. I'll call the fire department. I'm sure they'll send someone out to help." There was a long pause, and then the man said, "Oh, can you give me 10 minutes? I'm going to be off duty." And he came to fix my turn on my light bulb. His name was Eric Rishams, and every time I saw him thereafter, whenever I would see him, he would say, "Well then, Ruth, did you get your light bulb changed?" I said, "No, it's fine now, Eric. I can take care of it." And the thing that was also funny was when he came to the door, he was the same size as I am. So he had to stand on a table, but he did. He changed the light bulb. But as I said, that's when some of the policemen act that way. However, about a year after this upsetting experience, when I realized that the man that answered the phone was nothing like my father, who helped me whenever I needed it, but was much more like my first husband, I got a cat from a woman named Charmin. I adopted the cat, and I named the cat Fred. Well, I should have known that anyone that's named after a roll of toilet paper would have something unsavory about them, and sure enough, a year later, Charmin kidnapped Fred and took him back to her pet allowed a home. And I was so upset. Fred was my child, and I called my friend to see if my friend could get uh, Fred back. My friend, of course, being the policeman. And I called him, and the policeman that came to the door was obviously nothing like my father. Absolutely nothing. He was more like an angry bull that had just been penned in uh, when he was chomping to get out. Uh, and he said to me, "Well," he said, "this is not a matter for the police department. Have you thought of taking Sherman to small claims court?" And I looked at him and said, "Would your mother have called small claims court if someone had stolen you?" It was obvious to me that the man had absolutely no maternal uh, instinct at all. And I tried to look as regal as I could with my nose dripping and my eyes dropping tears that splashed on his polished shoes. And I said to him, "I don't want money, young man. I want Fred." I went into the house still choked up, and I called the police department. And I don't want to tell you what I said about this young man that they sent out to help me. But I said to them, "Isn't there somebody there that understands about our love for our animals?" And she said, "Yes, there is. And I'm going to put you in touch with him." Well, the young man that answered was a prince. He was absolutely adorable. He listened to my tale of Charmin kidnapping Fred and how upset I was. And he said, "Well, do you have Charmin's phone number? I'm going to call her." Now, he said, "I can't promise anything, but sometimes a word in the right place can do wonders." Well, I don't know what that word was, but within an hour, Fred was on my bed in my yard, romping around as usual. The young man that helped me was promoted to the head of the police department in Pacifica, California, the next year, which all goes to show that somebody besides me knows a good man when they see one. And it gives me a great feeling of comfort to know that while I lived in Pacifica, the man in charge of my safety was absolutely nothing like my first husband. He reminded me very, very much of my father. And thank you so much for joining me for my thought on this lovely Sunday.